there's always more to learn, always more to learn. Many of you may know, and many of you may not, that tangas are sacred Buddhist paintings. They are images that are supports for meditation. They were supports for teachers who wanted to show and depict the life of Buddha or what we might encounter along the path of enlightenment. And the teacher, Willa Baker, is my sound okay? Can you hear me okay? I just want to check that. Thank you, Lori. The teacher, Willa Baker, described seeing one particular Tanga when she was on a pilgrimage in Bhutan. And she said this one particular Tanga just really stood out to her. If you looked closely at it, it was as if you saw a whole universe. There were all kinds of different landscapes. There were rivers and mountains and valleys and birds and monkeys and elephants and people, and everything seemed to be contained in this Tanga. As you stepped back from it, what she describes as she stepped back from it, she recognized that this large world was contained in something even larger. It was contained in the belly of the Buddha, in the body of the Buddha. She spoke about some yogic traditions begin their practices every time with a recognition that just like the body of Buddha in the Tanga, your body contains the whole universe of every being in it. I think that's lovely. She encouraged us to try this in our own practices. That when we breathe for all beings. And when we sit down to meditate, we meditate for all beings. And when we move our bodies, we move our bodies for all beings. It really does widen the lens of a practice for just us to all beings. The Dalai Lama teaches that all humans are the same, made of flesh, bones, and blood. We all want to be happy. We all want to be free of suffering. Each of us has taken our first breath. Each of us will take a last breath. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Today, I'm going to read from the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, written by Sogyal Rinpoche. I think this is a very profound and beautiful book. It offers teachings and stories and practices for us, and it is all heart. The language can be dramatic and grand and somewhat heroic. And I can hear Bill's voice say, okay, nothing heroic here, nothing heroic here. We've spoken about Samvega, the importance and urgency to practice because these lives are precious. And that certainly pervades this book. He writes about one of the ways to train in compassion is in this practice of exchanging ourselves for others, not with others, exchanging ourselves for others. And he says, when someone is suffering and you find yourself at a loss, I don't know how to help, I don't know what to do, put yourself unflinchingly in his or her or their place. Imagine as vividly as possible how you would feel if you were in their or her or his position. Ask yourself, how would I feel? What would I need? What would the world look like to me from this view? He goes on, when we exchange ourselves for others in this way, we are directly transferring our cherishing from its usual object, I, me, mine, ourselves, to other beings. And he says and teaches, this is a very powerful way of loosening the hold on me and on the self-cherishing and self-grasping of the ego. Now, this sounds pretty grand and demanding. And you will hear language like that, the sword that cuts through. When we do this, we want to do this with lots of metta, grounding, pacing our own pace. And when I think about these practices and engage in them, I am first going to set up my field of care with the benefactors around me or loving presence, moments that I've experienced that have been kind and caring. I bring on spiritual teachers, even archetypes. We do this so that we can put ourselves into this field of compassion, into that circle of compassion. And you know, if we can't do it, we simply notice. Notice without judging. Judging is not useful. We need compassion for our limitations. Sometimes we need to step back and get our equanimity and ground and settle. And Catherine spoke so beautifully about the wings, wisdom, and compassion. Let me get this book for a moment. On how to meditate on compassion. He writes, I find myself that the simplest ways are the best and most direct. Every day, life gives us innumerable chances to open our hearts if we can only take them. And he gives some examples, an old woman crossing the road in the heat of the day with lots of bags and swollen legs, or a young girl on a subway train crying alone. And oh my goodness, you just have to turn on the TV. It's everywhere. He writes, any one of these sights could open the eyes of your heart to the fact of vast suffering in the world. Let it. Don't waste the love. Don't waste the grief it arouses. In the moment you feel compassion welling up in you, don't brush it aside. Don't shrug it off and try quickly to return to normal. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of the feeling or embarrassed by it. Don't allow yourself to be distracted from it or let it run aground into apathy. Be vulnerable. Use that quick, bright uplift, uprush of compassion. Focus on it. Go deep into your heart and meditate on it. Allow it to deepen. And the author, Stephen Levine, says, when your fear touches someone's pain, it becomes pity. When your love touches someone's pain, it becomes compassion. To train in compassion is to train in knowing that all beings are the same and suffer in similar ways, to honor all those who suffer, and to know you are neither separate nor superior to anyone. You feel for that person respect and even gratitude, because you now know that that person or whoever prompts you to develop compassion by their suffering is in fact giving you one of the greatest gifts of all. And then he ends by saying, that's why we say in Tibet that the beggar who is asking you for money is on that path, just maybe, to help you grow in compassion. Thank you all for listening.